This week's edition of WWE Raw featured a lot of chaos all over the place. Referees, officials trying to break up skirmishes everywhere on this edition of Raw, it seemed like. And certainly that was a big topic, but so was the fact that Dirty Dom, Dominik Mysterio, has made his choice, and he has chosen Mami. He makes Liv Morgan cry. Liv walks out dejected, and now all is well again, right? With Dominik Mysterio and Rhea Ripley. We know that's not the case because Dominik is Dirty Dom for a reason, and I think there were plenty of reasons to look at this segment on this week's edition of Raw and realize that there is still a very good likelihood that Dominik and Liv are going to wind up together. But for now, it was Dominik making his choice, and yes, as you saw from the thumbnail, getting licked on the face by Rhea Ripley, and a very happy Dominik walks out of WWE Raw because, again, who couldn't trust this face right here? Which I thought was a very nice little touch by WWE. After Rhea Ripley and Dominik did their thing in the ring, again, the one person had their face licked during this segment. Dominik walks away with a smile. Rhea Ripley walks away with a smile first. And the camera, just for that single second, decides to do this shot right here, where they zoom in on Dominik's face as he's looking at Rhea, who has started to walk away. And to me, this tells you all you need to know. I cannot trust this guy right here because I think Dominik is still up to something. I still think there is probably a good chance that somehow, some way, Dominik is the person that costs Rhea Ripley the championship opportunity at SummerSlam against Liv Morgan. We know this is a very heated match now, one of the most anticipated matches on the card at SummerSlam, which we'll talk about kind of the main theme with that on Raw. But I think this is very clearly, again, kind of that last spot where you think that all is well again, when in reality, we know that this will not be the end of this thing because Liv won't let it happen, and we are not sure yet if Dominik is up to something here, and maybe it is Dom who's going to pull the ultimate swerve at SummerSlam and perhaps either turn on Rhea Ripley intentionally or somehow he does wind up with Liv Morgan in another fashion. So I thought this was a pretty nice, I always talk about the camera shots, WWE's presentation. They do everything for a reason. And to zoom in on Dom like this for a second after Rhea turns her back and starts walking away. And again, this is just a smug look on Dominik's face. And I don't trust the guy. I don't know if you guys do, but I don't trust Dominik Mysterio right now. So we'll see if this is the end of this. We know it's not, but that was a big part of this edition of Raw, where it was Dominik making his choice and deciding that for now he will stick with Mami, and it made her very happy, right? Rhea Ripley was very happy again because she did lick his face and give him a kiss on the cheek. So Rhea was clearly thrilled at this whole thing, but I'm not sure she's going to be thrilled with what happens at SummerSlam. We'll talk more about that as we make our predictions for that show coming up here soon on the channel. But elsewhere, other than the Dirty Dom and Liv and Rhea Ripley stuff, which has dominated, again, this show for a while now, and it's worked pretty well if you look at it from the rating standpoint and such. But elsewhere, we did get the official announcement that it is going to be Seth Rollins as the guest referee for the CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre match, which is officially on now. Punk announced that he was cleared and ready to return to the ring. McIntyre comes out, and these two guys want to, destroy each other. We know that. We've talked about how this has become such a personal feud, and this is one of the biggest rivalries they built during the Triple H era in WWE Creative, and I think it's one of their best feuds of the year, without a doubt. You could even argue maybe it is their best feud of the year, and now we're going to finally get that match between the two, and we do now have the added sort of dynamic with Seth Rollins, who doesn't like either one of these guys. If you check out the video we did here on the channel recently, we talked about how this is going to really be a parallel to what they did at SummerSlam 1997, which was where you had Bret Hart versus The Undertaker, and the special guest referee was Shawn Michaels. Same scenario, where the referee doesn't like either participant. He's not going to love the idea of counting the three for either one of them, given the history, but ultimately, it was Bret kind of getting the one-up on Michaels, after Michaels accidentally hits The Undertaker with the chair. Bret spit on him, all this stuff, and it was Michaels, the camera, seeing him have to count the three for Bret getting the pin. So could you see that same scenario here, either for Punk or McIntyre? I think, the most impactful of the two would be Punk, because you kind of want your babyface to get his revenge in these kind of scenarios, given how personal it has gotten between him and McIntyre. So I think that there is kind of that similar scenario to get us to Punk versus Rollins, which, as we said, we knew we were getting at WrestleMania 40 before the injury. Then it becomes McIntyre versus Rollins. So it all fits together. The story's all there. And, I think there could still be some disappointment that Rollins is not in a match on this card. But remember, he is someone who was just recently coming back, from an injury that he's been dealing with for a long time now, we know. And so they ease him back into things in the Damian Priest match. And so now he kind of, can take a little bit of a month off from the PLEs and still be in a very significant role on this show, because now, again, he becomes one of the focal points of this match. And, you can argue, well, should that be the case given the fact that, this is such a huge match with McIntyre and Punk finally getting in the ring to have an official match. But like I said previously, I think they were going to have to add something to the mix here. You couldn't just do a simple one-on-one match between Punk and McIntyre. This thing has just gotten to another level, and you didn't want just a basic wrestling match between the two. So now you have, how are they going to play off of Rollins? We know next week on Raw, we're getting the official instructions from Seth Rollins for CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. So all of these combustible elements are going to have to somehow, work together here to make this thing work. And we know that's just going to be very hard to do for all parties. So I'm definitely intrigued by that. We kind of figured that would be an option when we started to see that there was really nothing for Rollins to do at SummerSlam other than somehow be involved in this. They weren't going to make it a triple threat. It just didn't make sense, as it stands right now, given the back and forth between Punk and McIntyre. So this is, I think, your best option if you weren't going to have, Rollins wrestle. And now he is, again, a very important part of this match, because he will be the person who ultimately decides who wins this match when you really think about it. So, yeah, so we got Seth Rollins added to the mix there on that. And we also got a very heated, kind of brawl to start this show. And I talked about it at the beginning, the chaos everywhere. This felt like your very chaotic Attitude Era type show, just if you set aside the angles, right? The angles were what made it feel that way, because you did have a lot of scenarios where you felt like the officials were having to come out, break things up. Adam Pearce, toughest job in America right now when you look at it. And so it's difficult, right? And he's trying to sort of make everything, keep the peace everywhere. And it's just not easy to do on this show right now. And so Damian Priest and Gunther were not holding back. They took this thing, as we said, kind of as we've seen with all these feuds, they took this thing now to another level for their specific feud heading into SummerSlam. I like the aggression that Priest showed here. He didn't come out. He wasn't going to have a back and forth on the mic with Gunther. He just came out and wanted to beat his ass. And sometimes that's what you got to do as a champion, right? You're being disrespected. Gunther called not only Priest, but he called Judgment Day street trash. And so Priest is not going to sit there and, have a verbal exchange with this guy. He's coming for him. And we saw that here, and so I thought that was good, kind of character development, I guess you could say, for Damian Priest, because he shouldn't have just walked out there and very nonchalantly addressed Gunther's remarks. He should have came after him, and that's what he did. And, the action spills outside, out of the arena, and, ultimately these two get barred from the arena for the rest of the night. But I thought that was what this needed. It needed a little bit of that something extra to add to the mix to make you feel like these two guys really don't like each other. It's one thing for them to say it just on the mic, but it's another for them to actually physically try to, again, destroy each other. And we've seen that same theme with all of these good feuds that Triple H has put together, on either brand right now. So I think that was a good development here with this one, because it made you feel the heat, right? At SummerSlam, you feel the heat because the heat's coming for Gunther, because Damian Priest is going to prove that he is a worthy champion. And you still had that same theme from Gunther here, talking about how he wants to bring prestige back to this great sport. And I love the professional wrestling approach that they're using with Gunther, which has always been the case, right? Gunther's always been, kind of heralded as one of the best wrestlers in the world. And actually pushing it that way, talking about what it's going to mean when he wins the championship at SummerSlam, what it means for professional wrestling. And I think that is, kind of that throwback type scenario that I think is going to work really well when he does win the title, whether that's at SummerSlam, whether they wait 4 weeks for Berlin. There's multiple options. But my guess is Gunther is going to be the world champion by the end of August at some way, shape, or form. He will be your champion at some point in August. So, and when that does happen, that sets up a lot of other interesting matches now, right? Because if Gunther becomes the champion, then you've got that eventual Gunther CM Punk match. You've got the stuff with Rollins still out there. There's other combinations we know still to work with. So, yeah, I think that, it seems to be where we're headed. Whether you think that's going to happen at SummerSlam or not, we'll make our official predictions for that here coming up soon. But I think that, yeah, the way they're using him right now and those video packages really pushing the prestige and the honor that Gunther wants to bring to this world title. It's very impressive. I think they've done a great job with that. So those two got physical. Things just continue to heat up there. And things also got physical between Chad Gable and the Wyatt Six, because that has also been a running theme on the show. As we know, although this time it was Gable getting what he had coming to him, right? Because you had sort of a lot happened in that segment where you had Otis, Tozawa and Xavier Woods had teamed up. And Karrion Kross had gotten the win over Woods, which they're going to meet next week. And again, by the way, we know Gunther and Finn Balor are going to meet next week too on Raw. But if you think about that afterwards, what happens? You get kind of Gable coming out with the Creed brothers, and so they come out, and you've got that whole setup where he's telling Otis and Tozawa and Maxine, this is their opportunity, right? They've got another chance, but he had to bring the Creed brothers in because he wanted to kind of feel some of the weaknesses. And so Gable takes it a little bit too far. You have members of the Wyatt Six come out on the ramp, but then it's Uncle Howdy coming from behind and finishing off Chad Gable for now. So I think that's the question, right? Is, are we going to, you've got to assume, and so, like we said, this thing has to get in the ring at some point. I mean, are we pretty much assuming that we have to probably get that one-on-one match between Chad Gable and Uncle Howdy / Bo Dallas at some point in the future? And so I think that's clearly what you're setting up here, and it's just a matter of when they decide to do it. So yeah, like I think, could that come as soon as SummerSlam? We don't know, but I feel like that was certainly there for a reason. And we've also, as we said, we've known since this thing started, whether you like the official debut or not, at some point there has to be wrestling involved, just given the fact that it is on that show, and they're trying to do it, differently than they do everything else, because it's just a completely different thing to book. But you've got to have matches at some point. And so it seems like, as of right now, you would think the first match we're going to get out of this is going to be that Bo Dallas versus Chad Gable match. And yeah, like I think that's going to be interesting. And of course, we did get finally the sort of the official on-screen pairing of Gable and the Creed brothers. We knew that was coming. So we know that's going to continue to develop on Raw as well as we move forward, and we'll see what comes of this, what Gable has to say after being taken out by Uncle Howdy. So I think that will be, interesting to see how they continue to further that storyline with that group. And then we get to our main event, which, yes, we did have Sami Zayn and Jey Uso teaming up on the show. And I know you're already thinking, all right, come on, we got to talk about the Bloodline, right? Like, how does this somehow get them to the Bloodline? There were a couple things Michael Cole said on this edition of Raw that I thought was interesting regarding, which is the way it should be. Like, he should be bringing up these things, saying, I wonder what Sami Zayn and Jey Uso think about what's going on with the Bloodline. Like, these are the little bitty tiny things. We talk about the breadcrumbs, right? Just leaving one after another after another. Not only you get Sami and Jey getting a win over the tag team champions, Finn Balor and JD McDonough in the main event, but you also do get, Cole bring up on commentary, what are they thinking regarding the Bloodline? And so you're already setting that in motion. The fact that you have these two team up, you have Sami make the save for Jey after he gets attacked backstage by Judgment Day. You're already bringing these two guys back together, right? So you guys know, I'm sure I'll break this segment down in full detail coming up in a future video because I'm sure there's more stuff as I go back and watch it they may have hinted at. But I think clearly, this is, again, something where you're starting to bring these two back together, and it's interesting timing, right? Because Sami has this one-on-one match now with Bron Breakker, which we know because Breakker took out Ilya Dragunov, kind of your referee stoppage finish after Breakker just speared him right into the apron. So Dragunov hits his head. That's how they call this one off. And so Breakker is going to get the one-on-one rematch against Sami Zayn, which at this point, I mean, I don't know how you can possibly think that Sami's going to retain this title. I think this is clearly going to be Bron Breakker's big moment at SummerSlam. I think it has to be. Otherwise, I don't know why they're doing the rematch one-on-one like this, because we thought, it could be triple threat with Dragunov added to the mix, but I just can't imagine that's going to be the case now. So you're going to get that one-on-one match between Sami and Braun, and I think this is Braun's shining moment here. He has to beat Sami this time around, I think this is where you crown Braun as the new Intercontinental Champion. Of course, he did hit the spear on Sami at the end of the show after, Sami and Jay were celebrating. And so you had Jay looking on at Braun afterwards. So possibility we get the Braun versus Jay match maybe next week. Not sure, but you're at least putting that in there as a possibility. So, I think continuing to make Bron Breakker look very strong. And I know there were a lot of people who were kind of upset that they beat Braun at Money in the Bank. One-on-one Sami, straight up, nothing, no shenanigans, anything like that. But he's still coming across. I mean, think of the way they've ended the show, the past several weeks, right? It's been Braun who's been the main theme of that. And so, I think that it's very clear right now that that they are moving forward with this, and I think it's going to result in him being crowned the Intercontinental Champion at SummerSlam, because like we said, what does that do? Also, if you crown Braun the champion, he beats Sami, that frees up Sami to get back to the Bloodline stuff. And so I think that's certainly one of the things you want to achieve coming out of SummerSlam. And look, I've said it. If you watch my video booking Roman Reigns' SummerSlam return, I think you could have Sami Zayn get involved at the end of the show somehow if you have the Bloodline going after Cody Rhodes. Cody has no help. There's no Orton. There's no Owens. Sami comes out to help. Jay comes out to help. And that's how you get all these pieces back together. Even though they're on separate brands, this is how you get everyone back together, which culminates in the return, it seems, of Roman Reigns at SummerSlam as well. So I think this was kind of that first step. Sami and Jay teaming up. And like I said, I'm sure I'll do sort of some extended thoughts on this. You guys know, other than just keeping it to this reaction, I like to keep this Raw reaction kind of short so you can get the highlights. But I'm sure I'll have some more thoughts on what that means for Sami and Jay moving forward with this Bloodline situation. Elsewhere, the only other stuff of note, you did have Sheamus and Pete Dunne, kind of trying to continue their thing. Sheamus wants to either have a pint or a banger, and I think he's going to have a banger with Pete Dunne. That seems to be, clearly headed towards that one-on-one match between those two. So we're going to get that soon. We know we continue the stuff between, Valkyria and Sonya Deville's group. You also had, Deville's group, Deville, Baszler, Stark kind of confront the tag team champions, Alba Fire and Isla Dawn backstage, making it clear that they're going to be the ones that take the tag team titles from them, not Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. So you kind of continued that. Zelina Vega was involved there. She got, sort of what I would say is probably a bit of a surprise win, maybe, over Zoe Stark, playing up, the injury from the attack from Sonya Deville. And so, I thought there was, furthering of that. And that's why, to kind of bring it full circle, I keep saying every week, there is direction on Raw. Even if it's something that, like, you're not fully invested in, right? Even if it's the lower card stuff or whatever, everybody has a purpose. They're here for a reason. And I think it's so easy sometimes, again, just to put people out there with no motivation, no reason whatsoever. They pop up on the screen. You don't see them again for 4 weeks, and that's it. Like, there's no reason to care about these people, to get invested in what they're trying to achieve. But on Raw, there is a very clear direction with everyone, it seems. And even if some of that direction is just losing matches, right? But, like, these people, like, even the little touches, right? The Zelina promo she did on the stage before a match. Like, it's just little things like that are not hard to do, that at least give you some backstory as to what's going on. And so I think that's what's working so well on Raw right now. Raw is definitely, in my opinion, the hotter show of the two at this point. Which you could say, well, it's 3 hours versus 2 hours. But you guys remember, if you've watched WWE for a long time, you remember how long some of those 3-hour Raws felt. They felt like 4 to 5 hour Raws during a certain period of WWE. But nowadays, like, sure, there are still going to be some lulls in the show where you may feel like it drags a little bit. But you're still, though, getting that added touch, like I said, of sort of backstory for the reason why these things are there, why they're doing the things they're doing. It all kind of connects together, and you have so many different feuds, right, that kind of intertwine with each other. And so that makes it a lot more unpredictable as to what you're going to see. So I think that's what Raw really has going for it right now. And so, again, you look at all the SummerSlam matches for Raw. I mean, think about, like, they've all heated up very quickly. Damian Priest and Gunther has heated up pretty quickly. Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan has heated up quickly. CM Punk, Drew McIntyre with Seth Rollins as the special guest referee. Like, that's a pretty good trio of matches kind of leading the way. Also knowing that you're getting Sami Zayn versus Bron Breakker again. And we'll see how the rest of the card kind of fills out. But I think Raw is definitely a lot of momentum right now for the show. And, again, we know coming out of SummerSlam, there's a good chance you're going to have some of those changes to the stories, right? Whether it is Gunther being the new champion. How is the Seth Rollins, decision in the match with Punk and McIntyre going to affect their stories coming out of it? if Bron Breakker is the Intercontinental Champion? Where does Sami Zayn go from there? Does he get back into the Bloodline stuff? There's so many things you can do, I think, with the Raw brand right now, and they seem to really be hitting all the right notes at this point. So, yeah, Raw is very enjoyable right now, and I think it could even be more the case after SummerSlam, given some of the changes in direction you could have with championships and stories and that kind of stuff. So, all right, there you go, guys. You let me know what you thought about this edition of WWE Raw. What'd you like? What didn't you like? As always, enjoy your feedback, and be sure to subscribe and hit the like button on your way out. Check out all the other videos here on the channel. On the road to SummerSlam, we'll have our SummerSlam predictions coming up for all the big matches as well. So, appreciate you guys watching as always, and let me know your thoughts on this week's edition of WWE Raw.